Hello YouTube, back with another review, an updated review of the Ginault Ocean Rover. I've now been wearing this lovely watch on my wrist every single day for the last 3 weeks, so thought I would do a bit of an update. If you haven't already done so, please check out my unboxing and then a 1 week on the wrist initial impressions review videos. There are a number of reviews now on YouTube of this watch, unsurprisingly, because the manufacturer, Ginault, is giving considerable discounts if you're prepared to do an online or written review. Average Bros, Watch Report, and Shawnee007 does a very interesting comparison to a Squale 20 Atmos. Now, Average Bros, in his second video, I believe it is, produces a seemingly endless number of divers to compare this to, including the Longines Hydro Conquest and the Helson Shark Diver, and it does rather well. I'm not just going to gush on for 10 minutes telling you how amazing this watch is, although I do think this watch is pretty amazing, certainly for the review price I paid for it. I've had it running for 3 weeks. I thought I'd talk about the movement. I've had a watch check app running on it now for the full duration of the time that I've had it. I'll pop up the first screenshot there. Now this one runs from the 14th of March or the 15th of March rather, to the 24th of March. In spite of a dodgy day somewhere around the middle there where it lost 10, 11 seconds a day, it was running pretty accurately, coming in at minus 7.4 average. Looked like it was settling into around minus 6 seconds per day. I decided to reset it at that point, rolled it forward by about 90 seconds. I'll pop up the second screenshot there, in anticipation of it losing about 6 seconds a day, but then it seemed to come into its own. It seemed to narrow down. As you can see there, an average of minus 3.4 seconds a day. So certainly within the COSC certification parameters. Ginault claim that the movement has been worked to achieve those standards. It does not claim to have certification, but it certainly claims that it is within those parameters. And it was looking likely up until the 2nd of April. Now, I reset it again. I live in Australia and we had a change from daylight savings time, so I was forced to change the time on my watch. The last couple of days it's gone back to minus 6. So if I had done this review 2 days ago, I would have been much more positive about the movement. Now I'm not so sure. It's sitting there at about minus 6. Perfectly acceptable, but not quite what Ginault says it's going to be running at. Now, how's the rest of it holding up? I've had a pretty interesting week. Not trying to be a douche, but I went to the opera with the watch on Thursday night, sitting next to a chap wearing a Breitling and 2 along from somebody wearing a Rolex. On Friday, I then went on a 2-day trek in Sydney's Blue Mountains, so the Ginault has certainly been out and about with me. I would normally have taken a trekking watch, a Casio Tough Solar, but I thought, nope, that's what you got this watch for. It's there to do everything, so I ended up taking the Ginault, and it's looking pretty good, I have to say. Just love how it wears. It wears really nicely, sits beautifully on my 7-inch wrist. I think it's just about the perfect size for me. Sits quite flat, dips into the skin on the back of the hand a little bit, so it wears a little bit thinner than its depth would suggest. This glide lock bracelet is fantastic as well. I sleep with my watch on, but this glide lock enables me to just knock it out a notch or two, meaning it's very comfortable to wear in bed as well, if you're so obsessed with your watches or you just like being able to know what the time is when you get up in the middle of the night. So how is the watch holding up? I think I've managed to make one tiny little mark on the bezel, just near the 50. You can barely see it there. The bracelet, well, a few scratches. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up in this light. A few little, maybe it needs a little bit more light than I'm able to give it here. A couple of little scuffs and scratches. There you go. You can see some of the, particularly on this side. But then again, I'm not going to take a watch trekking and then complain I got a couple of scratches on it. As I said, that's exactly what it's for. The bracelet clasp has indeed begun to scratch up pretty nicely there, but no complaints. As I said, that's what I got this watch for. So, cautionary note though for prospective owners: the glide lock. The glide lock is fantastic, very easy to operate, but it chews the end links. Look at that. I can't believe, I mean, this is a rip-off of Rolex. I can't believe that the Rolex glide lock chews links in the way that this one does. If you've got a Rolex, please leave me a comment. If you've got a Ginault, please also leave a comment. Not a big issue, because really, if you've sized it properly, you're not going to see that end link all that often. Perhaps if you are putting it over a wetsuit, or you've got a really swollen wrist that day, you're not going to see the end link much. But I just can't quite believe, as I said earlier on, I resized this one, that link moved over from the other side, which is why it's got a little mark on it there. Another word of caution, make sure you do these screws up very tightly. I didn't, and was having trouble with this clasp before I noticed that the screw was loose, so I managed to get that one tightened up. And also the one in the glide lock itself, that one there, that came loose while it was inside the glide lock. I had a hell of a time getting that open. I'm not sure, a little bit of jiggering around with a tiny staple was the only way I was able to get that out. But just make sure, that's my fault entirely, not the watch's fault, but just make sure you do these little screws up tightly. Now, there has, as I said, been a number of comparisons online comparing them to the Squally 20 Atmos. A friend of mine owns the Heritage model, brought it into work, and we did a bit of a head-to-head one night. I'm sorry, I know he's probably going to watch this video. You know, the Ginault just was in a different league. It made the Squally look and feel a little bit cheap. But then again, with an RRP of 1299, this is in a different league. The Squally is $550 US. This one is well over twice that. I don't know how many they've sold for 1299. I don't think I'd be buying this one for 1299. It's a beautiful watch, but the Chinese movement really would put me off from, and the total lack of brand heritage, history, or anything. You're taking a punt on a bit of a microband. I have to say, hand built in America, that's got a little bit of appeal. I'm sure if you're watching this review from the States, then there's probably even more appeal, but it's something a little bit different from the usual Swiss made that you'll find on the majority of quality timepieces. So a little bit unusual there. If you can get this watch at a discount, I highly recommend it. I'm really enjoying it. I've been wearing it every day. I think it is going to be the watch for me for the foreseeable future. Certainly the one that I'll be putting on every day if I take it off. As I said, I do sleep in my watch, so I probably won't be taking it off all that often. I'm going to keep the movement running. I'm going to keep the watch app going on that one, so I can keep a trace on how this particular movement is performing over the coming weeks and months. I'll do more updated reviews in due course when there's anything to note. But so far so good, really enjoying it. Can't quite believe I got this much watch for so little money. I paid 850 Australian dollars for this one by the time it got shipped over here. If you can get it, then seriously get it. I think apparently Ginault have got a couple of new models in the pipeline coming out in May, June. Be really interested to see those ones, to see whether they just do more Rolex homages or whether they do something a bit more original. I believe they're selling the prototypes. They're selling this golden sand loom, but slightly smaller indices and smaller sword hands with a black date. I think that could be a winner. They're also doing a C1 style white luminova on the smaller hands and indices with a white date and a cyclops. I'm not a fan of the cyclops. I quite like the date though, so perhaps the date model would be really interesting. Also, I would really like to see a GMT version of this. I think that would be really good. If they can do a GMT, keep it under $1,000, but retain the quality, then I think that would be a fantastic watch. So, still loving the Ginault, still really enjoying it wearing it every day. I will keep you updated as to whether the love lasts into the future or whether it's a flash in the pan after a month or two.